Caseus, Clone Wars. Part 4, The Shroud of Dravok. Chapter 5. Corbin walked through Coruscant's lower levels. He'd have to find the cheapest transport off-world. Where would he go? What could he do? He had no lightsaber, very few credits, and only what he could carry on his back. His heart hardened. He felt betrayed, after everything he'd done for the Republic. Now he was nothing. Not a Jedi, not a soldier for the Republic, not a defender of the innocent. All he was lost. Lost and angry. Finding a cantina, he went inside and sat in the corner, keeping his hood up to hide his face from any unwanted attention. Seeing an unfinished drink on the table next to him, he swiped it and drank what was left of the bitter ale.
Hey, pal, can you spare a couple credits?
Corbin looked up and saw a drunken patron holding out his hand.
Leave me alone. I don't have any money.
Oh, come on, you gotta have a few spare credits somewhere on you.
I said leave me alone.
No, I promise you, I'm good for it.
Corbin grabbed the drunken fool by his collar and pulled him close.
Get away from me!
Corbin flung the unsuspecting patron across the floor where he slid and hit his head on a dirty waste bucket. The music in the bar stopped as everyone stared at him. Standing up, Corbin glared at the other drinkers and scoundrels before leaving the cantina, stepping out into a back alley.
That was quite a display in there, Corbin.
Corbin's eyes grew wide as he turned around. From out of the shadows, drink in hand, stepped Dravok. Corbin rushed at him, trying to kill the man who took his arm. Dravok merely raised an eyebrow and pushed a nearby crate in his path, causing him to stumble and fall into a puddle of filthy rainwater.
You couldn't have honestly thought that was going to work.
Corbin got up and swung his fists in a frenzy as Dravok effortlessly evaded each blow before grabbing Corbin's wrist and twisting, subduing him and bringing him to his knees. Corbin pathetically tried again to punch, but Dravok once again stepped aside before smacking the young man in the back of his head.
Are you going to keep this up, Corbin? It doesn't seem like it's working out too well for you.
Corbin sat on his knees, seething with tears streaming down his face.
Just do it. Just kill me. I have nothing left.
Dravok rolled his eyes and kicked Corbin in his side.
Get up. Enough with the melodrama.
Corbin hesitated before standing, facing the man he hated more than anyone.
You're a long way from the temple, boy. A Jedi should be far more careful about where he wanders off to. I'm not... They expelled me.
Dravok's eyebrows raised slightly.
Expelled you? Now that's a surprise. What, did you track mud into the archives or something?
Corbin's eyes filled with rage.
You think this is a joke? They took everything!
Dravok leaned against the wall and listened, his eyes fixed on the pathetic sight before him.
I did everything they told me to do. Everything. I served them for 20 years. And only ever served the Republic. I made a mistake. I lost control, and they banished me. No one, not even my own master, stood up for me.
Dravok stepped closer and handed his drink to Corbin.
Loosen up. If you're acting like this much of a child, I would have kicked you out too.
Sneering, Corbin grabbed the bottle and drank profusely.
You fell into the very trap I tried to warn you about years ago. What do you mean? I told you, the Republic doesn't care about the things you and I do. You're just like me, Corbin.
Corbin glared at Dravok.
I am nothing like you. Sure, you say that. You'd love to believe you're far more upstanding and righteous than I am. But we both care about the innocent, the downtrodden, those who the Republic profits from, and to whom the Jedi turn a blind eye. Tell me, Corbin, since the beginning of the war, did you notice your efforts and struggles make any difference whatsoever? Moreover, Were your efforts ever commended by anyone other than your friends? Did the council ever commend you? What about your master? Did he ever once take your well-being into consideration when you were so obviously suffering?
Corbin stood, saying nothing.
They don't care about you, Corbin. You were only ever a tool to them. As soon as you had outlived your usefulness, they cast you aside. Just as they'll do to your friend Caseus.
Corbin leaned against the wall and slumped over.
I should have known. It's not entirely your fault, Corbin. You were too indoctrinated into the Jedi's dogmatic philosophy. Only now have your eyes been opened.
Corbin sat in silence for a moment, before looking up at Dravok.
What do I do? What can I do?
Dravok helped him to his feet.
You need to do what you think is right. Cast away your ties to the Jedi. You now have a freedom that was never afforded to you by them. What you do with it is up to you. The Jedi's hold over you is broken. What about you? What are you going to do? I'm leaving Coruscant. I'll bide my time until such a time as I can enact my own plans.
Corbin's eyes narrowed.
And what plans are those?
Dravok walked away from the alley before turning back.
All in due time, Corbin.
Corbin stood in the alleyway as Dravok vanished into the shadows. He knew what he would do. Back at the temple, Caseus was asleep next to Sarah's bed. It was a miracle he slept at all after what happened just a day prior. As he slept, he was awakened by a gentle touch on his cheek. Caseus! Caseus! Caseus slowly opened his eyes and saw Sarah sitting upright in her bed. Caseus was filled with relief as he took her hand and held it tightly. When did you wake up? A few hours ago. I didn't want to disturb you. I heard about what happened. Caseus looked down and continued to hold Sarah's hand. What should we do? There's nothing we can do. Corbin could be anywhere. Sarah gently held Caseus' hand and closed her eyes. I'm sorry, Caseus. It's not your fault, Sarah. If anything, this is my fault. Corbin needed help. And when the council expelled him, I didn't do enough to stick up for him. I shouldn't have let them do it. Caseus, you're a Padawan. What could you have done? You can't go against the council. I could have done something. Corbin was always there for me when I needed him. He needed me yesterday, and I did nothing. Sarah gently lifted Cassius' head. Then we should go talk to the council. Try to get them to see they made a mistake. Cassius nodded. I'll be out of here in a few hours. We'll head straight to the council and... Cassius' comlink began to beep. It was his master. Master? Cassius, stay at the temple. Do not leave under any circumstances. I just received word that Dravok has escaped. What? No! I'm currently investigating with Master Plo as we speak. But Dravok could be anywhere. Until we find him, you need to stay where you are. Do you understand me? Yes, Master. Be careful. Sarah and Cassius exchanged worried glances. If Dravok was on the loose, all of their efforts to find him over the past 6 years were wasted. What should we do? Should we try to help? Cassius stared at the window and back to Sarah. No, we can't take that risk. We're going to stay here and wait for our orders. He couldn't have gotten off Coruscant. Master Takai found him before, she'll find him again. When she does, we can help her bring him in. Are you sure, Cassius? She may not find him in time. If she doesn't, we'll find him again. And next time he may not live to escape again. Cassius. Cassius sighed and put his head down. Why don't you go get some air? I'll be fine here. I'm fine. I don't want to be alone right now.
Okay. Then I'm thankful for your company.
The afternoon slowly began to draw closer towards evening. The sun was beginning its descent, and Master Takai and Master Plo flew through the streets in a temple speeder towards the lower levels of Coruscant.
Do you think he's hiding in the underbelly of the city? It seems a foolish move when you're being hunted.
I know Dravok. He's going to try and flee the planet on an unmarked shuttle. Most likely he's already looking for a smuggler to sneak him off-world.
Then we better find him before he escapes. If he evades us again, there's no telling where he'll run off to.
Their speeder flew down to the lower levels and parked as the two masters looked around for the elusive Dravok. They searched in every cantina and marketplace they could find, but had no luck.
This is hopeless, Kakuri. Even if Dravok is still on Coruscant, he's become a ghost. As evil as his heart has become, I can't help but admire his ability to vanish so quickly.
You're right. More than likely, we're looking exactly where he expected us to search for him. He's always 10 steps ahead of us.
We mustn't lose hope just yet. But it may be best to return to the temple and gather our evidence to try and pinpoint where he'll be going next.
Agreed. Let's get back to our speeder. We don't have many allies in these parts.
Walking back through the streets, they came to the secluded corner where they had parked. Except...
Kakuri, where is the speeder?
The two of them looked around for the speeder they had arrived in. It was gone.
Damn it. This is a problem.
Do you think so?
I'll contact the temple and have them send another speeder.
You're forgetting something, Kakuri. Our speeders require specific codes known only to the Jedi. This is no common criminal we're dealing with.
Dravok. How could we have been so close without sensing him?
It may not have been Dravok. Our speeder codes change every year. Dravok would not have been able to access the controls without having the updated verification codes.
Then who could have taken it, Master?
I'm not sure, but we need to return to the temple at once. I sense a disturbance.
I'll contact the temple right away.
Back at the temple, Caseus and Sarah sat on the front steps. Sarah was discharged, the mark from Corbin's attack still on her head.
We should speak to the council, Caseus. Try to get them to see reason.
I already contacted Master Windu. The council is preoccupied with Dravok's escape right now. Besides, something tells me they wouldn't listen to us anyway.
Then what can we do?
Good question. I guess the only thing we can do is wait. Caseus and Sarah sat in silence. How could so much have gone wrong in such a short amount of time?
Am I interrupting, Padawans?
Master Terran stood behind them.
Master Terran, no. We're just...
Thinking of Corbin? I understand. I know you three were very close. He talked about you too often. How are you holding up?
How am I holding up? Cassius stood and looked Master Terran dead in the eyes. How do you think I'm holding up? My best friend is somewhere out there, helpless, abandoned, because of the council, and because of you.
Caseus,
Sarah tried to protest. Corbin was your student. You were supposed to be his mentor, his teacher. But all you did was use him. When he needed help, you turned your back on him. Did you see how scared he was yesterday? He trusted you to help him. To make the council see that he wasn't a threat, but you sided with them. And you cast him aside without a second thought. You should be ashamed to call yourself a master.
Caseus, that's enough.
Master Terran looked at Cassius, his eyes full of shock and sadness. Cassius stared the old master down before walking back inside with Sarah following close behind.
Caseus, you just insulted a master to his face.
Yes, and?
Caseus, I know you're upset. I am too. Corbin wasn't just your friend, you know. But you can't just take out your frustrations on his master.
Why? He's part of why Corbin is in the state he's in now. Why shouldn't I call him out on his failure?
Because it won't bring Corbin back.
Caseus and Sarah stared at each other. His expression turned from anger to grief. I know, I just... Sarah held on to Caseus.
I know.
At the front of the temple, Master Terran stood, thinking over Caseus' words. His concentration was soon broken, however, at the sight of a Jedi speeder landing at the bottom of the temple steps. A robed figure stepped out and began walking to the top. Master Terran sensed a familiar presence. It was Corbin. Caseus sensed it too.
Sarah, I feel... Corbin.
Two temple guards noticed the speeder had landed and stepped forward, noticing Corbin, who kept his hood up.
You are not permitted here, Corbin Roth, by order of the High Council.
Please, I just want to speak to my master.
You will not be told again. Turn around and leave. Wait. I will go speak to him. Lay down your weapons.
Reluctantly, the temple guards stood in place as a few other Jedi showed up to see what was happening. Master Terran walked over to his former Padawan.
Corbin. Master. Please. I need help. Corbin. Forgive me. I realize now that I was wrong not to stand up for you before the council. Please, come with me.
Corbin's eyes welled with tears.
I can't return, Master. There's no going back. Of course you can. Please, come with me. We'll talk to the council, and I'm sure we can make them see reason.
Corbin looked with sadness at Master Terran, who smiled gently.
You really want to help me? More than anything.
Corbin looked down for a moment.
Then, I'll need your lightsaber.
Master Terran's expression changed from confusion to horror as he felt a sharp, excruciating pain in his stomach. Looking down, he saw that Corbin had plunged a knife into his stomach. Sarah cried out in horror as Corbin took his master's weapon from his belt, allowing his body to fall to the ground. Master Terran lay in a crumpled heap, holding his stomach and writhing in agony. Corbin! Corbin looked up at Caseus. The temple guards ran towards him, attempting to apprehend him, but Corbin ignited the lightsaber and held it to Master Terran's throat.
Not another step, do you hear me? I mean it!
The guards stopped where they stood.
I'm getting back in that speeder, and I'm leaving. If you try to stop me, I'll kill him.
Caseus was in shock. This wasn't Corbin. This wasn't his childhood friend. Corbin! Caseus walked down the steps towards Corbin.
Don't come any closer, Caseus!
Corbin, you need to put the saber down. This isn't the answer.
This is the only answer, Caseus. Everything that's made me into who I am is because of him.
Corbin, please, look, just talk to me. I'm your friend. I want to help.
You can't help me, Caseus. Don't you get it?
You, Sarah, Takai, you're all part of the problem.
The Jedi Order is lost, Caseus. It's been lost for years. They no longer care about the people they claim to serve. Their allegiance to this stagnant republic has turned them into self-serving, self-glorifying order of fools. Don't go down with them, Caseus. Come with me. Let's get out of here. Let's make a real difference. We can help change the galaxy for the better without the Jedi.
Caseus looked at Corbin in horror and disappointment.
Corbin, don't you hear yourself? Don't you know who you sound like? I don't see my friend right now. I see Dravok and his lies. You've become consumed by them. Put down the saber, now!
Corbin sneered at Caseus.
I can't do that, Caseus. I'd hoped that everything that had happened over the past several days had opened your eyes like they did mine. But you're too far gone. Don't try to follow me, Caseus.
Is this how the great Corbin Roth wants to be remembered? As a cowardly murderer?
Don't you call me a coward, Caseus, if you know what's good for you. You've never been a match for me.
Then why don't you prove it? Show the world how great you are. If you think you can defeat me, then do it. Face me, Corbin.
You'd like that, wouldn't you, Caseus? A chance to prove yourself that you're some great Jedi warrior. Is this really what you want?
No. It's what needs to be done.
You think I'm going to take that bait, Caseus? The minute my back is turned, the others will have me surrounded. No, I don't think so.
Caseus paused for a moment before turning towards the growing crowd of Jedi watching these events unfold, no one daring to make a move in fear of Master Tarn's life.
I want all of you to stay back. Do you hear me?
One of the temple guards interjected.
You have no authority to forbid us from keeping the peace on temple grounds, Padawan.
Caseus turned to the temple guards.
If you interfere, then Master Tarn dies, and his blood will be on your hands. If you want to see him live, stay out of this.
The guards looked at each other and back to Master Tarn as Corbin continued holding the lightsaber to his master's throat. Caseus looked at Master Tarn. He wouldn't last much longer. He had to be quick. At the top of the steps, members of the Jedi Council stood and watched alongside Sarah and Master Dralik.
Master, we need to help him.
No, Sarah. If we interfere, he'll be killed. We have to stay put and hope that Cassius can put a stop to this.
Sarah looked in disbelief and fear as Cassius threw off his robe and ignited his lightsaber.
I didn't want it to come to this, Cassius.
Neither did I. Cassius leapt forward and attacked as Corbin moved on to the defensive. Their blades crackled and sparked in the orange glow of the setting sun. This spot, the steps of the temple, where once they used to sit and talk for hours, was now their battleground. Cassius parried a swift strike from Corbin and sliced at his shoulder, narrowly missing. Corbin threw a fierce punch at Cassius, grazing his chin and forcing him backwards. Corbin took the opportunity to press his attack and laid into his former friend with the ferocity that Cassius had never seen from his friend. Blocking a blow from behind his back, Cassius landed a harsh knee to Corbin's stomach and leapt behind him, slashing at his back. But Corbin knew Cassius too well. He ducked beneath the attack and kicked Cassius in his knee, the pain of the blow forcing Cassius back on the defensive. Their blades caught in a bind as their faces stood mere inches apart from each other. Cassius looked into Corbin's eyes. The once bright and determined eyes of his friend were now filled with a burning hatred.
It's not too late, Corbin. You can still turn away from the dark side.
Don't quote that Jedi dogma to me!
Corbin headbutted Cassius in his nose, drawing blood. Cassius was stunned for a moment as Corbin pushed his attack. Cassius' vision was blurry, but he could sense Corbin's attacks, and he noticed something. Corbin was falling back into his old patterns of combat. He was fighting too aggressively. If he wanted to beat Corbin, he needed to be unpredictable. Calling upon the Force, Cassius leapt in the air and threw his lightsaber downwards, catching Corbin off guard. Landing and calling his weapon back to him, he switched up his style from Gemso to Makashi, the form Corbin struggled with the most. Corbin swung wildly as Cassius dodged and ducked under each strike before swiftly spinning his saber and catching Corbin's blade in another bind. Before Corbin could react, he was met with an elbow directly to his left eye and stumbled back to gain distance. Cassius knew what Corbin's next move would be, and he was ready. Raising his saber above his head, Corbin sliced down at Cassius, who quickly let out a burst of force energy with a mighty repulse, knocking Corbin off his feet. Cassius stood over Corbin and held his blade pointed at his chest.
It's over, Corbin. Stop this.
Corbin yelled and swatted Cassius' blade away and stood up. Corbin knew he was in a bad situation here.
Corbin, it doesn't have to be like this. Turn yourself in. Let us help you.
Corbin became enraged.
Enough!
He was now swinging as hard and fast as he could at Cassius, who was dodging and deflecting with ease.
You're losing your cool, Corbin. You're not going to win this.
Shut up!
Corbin swung at Cassius' head, but by the time his blade reached its target, Cassius was already behind him and knocked him down with a brutal kick to his back.
You've lost, Corbin. Face it! Corbin scowled and looked from Caseus to the weakened Master Terran. Then I won't die for nothing! Corbin sent a force push at Caseus, staggering him briefly, and raised his blade over Master Terran and swung down. But his blade never made contact. Caseus had intercepted the strike and cut through Corbin's remaining organic arm. His lightsaber fell to the floor as Corbin cried out in pain and stumbled backwards. Caseus looked at his friend with pity. Corbin, please. Corbin held his wound and glared at Caseus, giving him the most vile stare he had ever seen before fleeing. Caseus tried to pursue him, but Corbin leapt from the landing platform and onto the roof of a large passing transport below. Corbin and Caseus shared one final look at each other before the transport escaped. Running over to Master Terran, Caseus picked him up, soaking his robes in blood in the process. Get him to the medical bay! Hurry! The temple guards quickly took the dying master in their arms and rushed him off as the remaining Jedi stared at Caseus. Caseus! Sarah ran to him and looked at his bleeding nose. I'll be all right. Contact Master Takai and tell her everything. I'll be there as soon as I can. Sarah nodded and rushed off as Caseus walked over to Master Drollig, who stood alongside a few members of the council, looking at him with very stern gazes.
Caseus,
You can spare me the lecture, Master Drollig. Master Terran is alive, and Corbin is dealt with. I'm going to medical to get fixed up. If you have an issue with that, maybe you should talk it over in a meeting. Caseus brushed Master Windu's shoulder as he walked by quickly, and made his way to medical, where the doctors fixed his broken nose. It wasn't long before Master Takai arrived with Sarah. Caseus, are you all right? Caseus sat in silence. You want the truth? No. No, I'm not all right. Master Takai dismissed Sarah from the room and sat across from her apprentice. As angry as he was, Master Takai could see the pain in his eyes. You did the right thing, Caseus. You saved an innocent life. Caseus looked at her. So then why do I feel terrible? Doing what's right isn't always easy, especially when it means standing against a friend. Caseus stared blankly and rested his head on his master's shoulder. Master, do you think it's too late to help Corbin? I don't know, Caseus. But as Jedi, we must never lose faith that those who have fallen are never beyond saving. There's still good in him, Master. I know there is. I'm not going to give up on him. I know you won't, Caseus. I want you to rest now. Caseus nodded and returned to his quarters, passing Sarah. The two exchanged a quiet moment of sadness before going their separate ways. Entering his room, R3 beeped sadly. I'm sorry, R3. Not now. Caseus closed his eyes and slowly drifted into a very uneasy sleep. The next morning, Caseus was awoken by a knocking on his door. Opening it, he was greeted by two temple guards.
Caseus Urshon, you are summoned by the council. Report to the High Council chamber in 20 minutes.
The guards left as Caseus sighed and placed his hand on R3 before changing his tunic and robes. After cleaning his face, he made his way to the turbo lift and into the waiting room outside the chamber, where Master Takai stood. Master, what's this about? Follow me, Caseus. Caseus followed his master into the council chamber. It was dark. Not a speck of light shone. Suddenly, several lightsaber blades ignited around him in a large circle, with a final small green blade activated in the center, where Master Yoda stood.
Caseus Urshon, step forward.
Caseus stepped forward, confused.
Kneel.
Caseus nodded and knelt down in front of the Grand Master. The small green blade hovered over both of his shoulders.
By the right of the council, by the will of the Force. Rise, Caseus.
With a swift motion, the Grand Master severed his Padawan braid.
Jedi Knight of the Republic.
Caseus was filled with confusion, pride,
admiration, and about 50 other emotions. He stood as the sabers all swiftly shut off, leaving the room in darkness once more as the shades slowly drew back from the windows. Caseus stood before the High Council. Master Yoda, I thought you were off-world.
Off-world I was, but returned have I, to oversee more pressing concerns.
Caseus looked at the Jedi Masters. What's going on? I don't understand. I haven't faced my trials yet. Master Takai stepped forward, removing the hood from her cloak. I spoke with the Council, Caseus. We have come to a decision that your efforts and actions in the past 6 years were sufficient enough for your promotion to Jedi Knight. You have held your own against several far more skilled duelists, Ventress, Grievous, Dravok. Thus, you have faced your trial of skill. Your injuries you sustained on Nal Hutta after falling from the airship would have felled many lesser Jedi. But you persevered and overcame your wounds, and in the process, your trial of the flesh. At 16 years old, you took on Dravok, regardless of the danger involved, to save countless lives at the temple. Thus, you passed your trial of courage. You were able to see through the deception of Dravok during his attacks on the temple, and thus sufficiently passed your trial of insight. And confronting Corbin, your friend, you not only saved an innocent life, but you resisted the allure of the dark side, and stood by the Jedi Order in the end. Thus, you passed your trial of the Spirit. The decision was unanimous. The Council has agreed that you have earned your place amongst our ranks as a Jedi Knight. Caseus was humbled. He didn't know what he could say, but finally he stood before the Council. These past few days have tested me beyond what I imagined. I want you to know that even though I confronted Corbin and stopped him, I didn't do it for the Order. I did it because it was the right thing to do. My trust in the Council and the Order has been tested lately. But after seeing what happened to my closest friend, I realized that, regardless of my personal problems, I have a duty to the Order and to the galaxy. Therefore, I accept my promotion. I thank you all. The Masters nodded as Cassius picked up his Padawan braid and left the council chamber. As he sat downstairs on the steps of the temple, he was approached by Master Takai. Cassius stood and smiled to his teacher of over 16 years. So does this mean I have to stop calling you Master? 'Cause it would feel weird calling you Kukuri. Master is fine, if you wish. Cassius, words cannot express how proud I am of you. Training you has been one of my greatest challenges and my greatest pleasure. I was honored to be your master. Cassius smiled and hugged her. And I was humbled to be your student. Master Takai slowly returned the hug. I have something for you. My master gave me something when I was a knight. Now I wish to carry on that tradition. Master Takai removed her cloak and folded it before handing it to Cassius. Your cloak? I realize it may not seem like much, Cassius, but you're your own Jedi now. You're no longer my pupil. Be that as it may, I want you to have this. So in some small way, I'm always with you wherever you go. Cassius felt the soft fabric of the cloak and looked up at his master, smiling. I'll cherish it forever, Master. Sharing one more bow with Master Takai, Cassius went on his way and found Sarah waiting for him at the top of the Jedi Temple. She smiled and stared at him as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his Padawan braid. You did it, Cassius. I'm proud of you. I want you to have this, Sarah. Cassius gently placed the braid into her hand and closed her fingers around it. As a promise. A promise that I'll be there when you need me. That I will always love you. Sarah smiled and placed her hand on his cheek. I know. I love you too. Caseus gently stroked her hair and stared into her eyes as they kissed. After a few moments, they broke apart, staring into the distant cityscape. I'm going to need your help, Sarah. Corbin's still out there. We need to find him and bring him back. I won't give up on him. Do you think we can help him? If we don't, who will? Sarah nodded and rested her head on Cassie's shoulder. The past couple days had brought them so much hardship, but the worst was yet to come.